Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest.
Mhm.
I'm proud to present Doc Betts from UK. Doc is the founder of Sure Betts HR Solutions, a UK-based HR consultancy firm. He's also a speaker, mentor, and book author. Doc, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Okay, thanks, Peter, for having me on the podcast. So, my story is ultimately the reason I wanted to do what I do for a living is I wanted to make work better for people. Everything I do kind of comes back down to that mantra is can I make people have a better experience at work, whether you're a business owner or an employee? So, I started out in HR some 23 years ago now. I started out in the public sector. Had some really interesting experiences there, which a lot of them have shaped the way I think and deal with things now, mainly as an act of rebellion against a lot of them, if I'm honest. And even back then, it just gave me a sort of thought about actually work can be better than this if people are willing to let it happen and give consideration to not just doing things the way they've always been done. So I kind of went generalist, spent 20 years of my life in different jobs, working my way up to HR director level. And then the pandemic changed my entire mentality about what I did. And it made me decide to take the little sideline I'd been doing in addition to my HR director's day job into something full time because I found I quite like being self employed and helping lots of different businesses rather than just focusing on one. So, yeah, in a bit of a nutshell, that's my story today.
Thank you very much. And I see you have a variety of different experiences in different sectors, and you're now an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
I saw on your webpage that you're also a mentor to entrepreneurs,
Okay.
and you help them develop their business, and you also offer services for entrepreneurs as for the HR related services. So I'll go right into it. What is most intriguing for me?
Mhm.
Everyone is talking about this new generation, millenniums, and the generation behind them, that they are completely different than baby boomers and Generation X that we learned about in school. So how do this new generation differ? What are the main differences between the old generations and the new ones? And where should entrepreneurs pay most attention? What are the details that are really make or break in this generation?
Okay, so it's an interesting question and one that I've got lots of fun experiences of working with and trying to help people solve. The most important thing for an entrepreneur, small business owner to think about is how to keep different generations in their workplace happy because they will all want different things. But fundamentally, you've all got to have the same mission, vision, and values that you're working towards a common goal in your business. And if you're not communicating that clearly to your team, then that's your problem and that's something you need to change and do differently. However, if we break it down into the generations, I think the biggest change is technology, because obviously it's enabled people to work in a different way that wasn't even possible 20 something years ago. And just to use an example of the pandemic, we were pretty much all able to use our laptops at home and access all our files and do everything overnight remotely. In the past, that wouldn't have been possible. When I look back to my first office jobs in my early 20s, and that's only talking some 24, 25 years ago now, we needed to be in an office because we needed the whiteboard, the fax machine, the photocopier, the paper filing system, and the big desktop PC that sat on our desk. So therefore, there was no real, it wasn't so easy for people to work at home. Whereas now it's much easier for people to work from anywhere and be flexible. And that's completely scared people who have been used to coming into the workplace and doing that for years because they now have to trust people to work in different ways. I think there was, in the past, there was a notion of a job for life, which definitely doesn't exist anymore. And you do have the older generation. I don't want to generalize either because there's different sort of mentalities across the generations as well. But the older generation will be used to coming in, doing a job, going home again, perhaps staying with one company for a long time and showing some loyalty towards it in the hope they will get promotions naturally as time went on. It is very different now. There's for Gen Z, and the millennials, Gen Y, there is more of a desire to see a career path early on, and that's what I've helped a lot of organizations design, so that people are more likely to stay put for a bit longer if they can see they can actually go somewhere. Otherwise, now you'll find the younger generations, if they're not getting what they want out of a workplace, they will look quite quickly to move on somewhere else. And there's different factors that motivate them to do it. And it's not always about money either. It can just be about the employee experience and how much they're empowered to solve problems and to do their best work.
Okay. How important is continuous education right now in the workplace? And how should small companies be organizing that? Because we know for large companies, easy, they make a department
Mm.
to educate, and they can hire best, let's say, consultants and all this stuff. But how should small companies go about it? How should they offer continuous education to their workforce, regardless if they're just let's say 3 or 4 people company?
Okay. So first of all, to answer the first bit of the question, yeah, continuous education is really important for everybody because, as somebody once said to me, if you don't move forwards and you stand still, you actually go backwards. So whether you're a business owner or whether you're in a more junior level in an organization, and even if you've got no desire to want to progress to another role, you still need to keep your knowledge up to date of your sector, what's going on around you, and also how work is changing and making sure that you're moving with the times. So yes, education plays a big part in that, but it's important, as you say, for small businesses, they might not have their own internal training department, but it's to first of all consider exactly what training people need to progress in their roles. So you could come up with a training plan, you could do a skills gap analysis. So there's lots of different techniques and tools that you can use, and that I've worked with businesses to help them identify what some of those things are. And then the second point is really then once you've got that, is to invest wisely. So, for example, you wouldn't put people on a leadership training program that you just throw some money at them to sit in a classroom for a day and to learn lots of theory. You would want something that's really bespoke to that organization with a trainer and facilitator who gets the culture, the setup, some of the issues that are faced, and then can make that training really relevant to that particular organization. So I think that's the first thing. And secondly, it's about using lots of different training methods as well. So it's not just about classroom-based learning or e-learning. It can be a mixture of different types. It could be learning from your colleagues. It could be doing bite-sized learning. It could be having coaching and mentoring programs in the workplace just to give people different styles, because we all learn in different ways, and some people learn better through doing. And it's also quite a normal thing to say people learn more through their mistakes than the things they get right. So also you need good supportive people leaders and line managers in a business who will allow people to make mistakes and errors within a certain range, not something that's catastrophic, of course, but something that will at least give them the power to learn things and to grow. And but they can also be pulled back from the brink if they need to be pushed in the right direction. So yeah, there's all of those different factors that have to be considered.
Okay, thank you for that insight. I would also like to know your take on certification. Right now, if we check on the internet, there is certificate for everything and for everyone. What's your take on this certification? Should people and company get involved in all these certification processes? Should it make it an integral part of let's say growing the knowledge base and experience base? How should small companies and then mid-sized companies go about all this certification, and how important is certification for employees, as to regards if they would swap a job, how would that help them?
I think it's really what gets the best results. So when you look at certificates, yes, you can get certified online. Yes, you can do courses, you can have a certificate, but it's more about, is the learning credible? Is it going to help make you a better employee, a better leader? Is it going to help the business grow? I think those are the questions to ask. Obviously, in some areas, you need a qualification to remain legal, which is the main thing. But for others, it's about finding the right coach or the right trainer or the right provider that can actually get the results you need and will inspire people. And I know I've sat in masterminds where there's coaches who most people love, I don't, and that's fine. That's normal. We know if you're choosing that sort of personal learning, you're going for somebody's personality type rather than a certification. But I think also there is no real substitute for experience as well. So sometimes that is more important than a qualification. If you're good at academic study and you know you can achieve a certain level, yes, you can have the piece of paper. Does it make you any good at your job? I don't think so. I think actually you learn more from experience. So to answer your question about small businesses and how they cope with certification, I think it can get overwhelming if you're not careful. So my view on it would be that you need to consider carefully what you actually need to be legal and prioritize on those. For everything else in terms of learning, you can look at whether a course is been verified and in terms of continuous professional development, and it counts towards that, but also on the reputation of the trainer, the mentor, the coach, whoever you're bringing in, as to whether it can get results. And then you also have to then tie that up with your own culture, as in, is it supportive enough to help people to learn and grow and develop? Because there's no point with the best training program if you don't get the bosses in the business that back that up. So I think, yeah, for small businesses, it's look at the budget carefully, look at compliance first, but then look at results as well.
Thank you. We touch on education.
Mm.
I would like to know your point of view about motivation. There is a lot of motivators going on, and they offer their services to entrepreneurs and small business owners that they will help them motivate their workers to work better and to achieve higher goals. What's your take on the motivators? Can the motivators be outsourced?
That's a very good question. I don't think they can be completely outsourced. It comes back down to having good line managers who can motivate their teams and know how to do it. There are certain functions of a line manager that should never be outsourced to other people. And as an HR person, I often say, I'm not going to have the difficult conversations on your behalf. You actually need to do that. I'll coach you in how to have them and the right things to say, but you need to own it. And I think the manager still needs to own it as well, because that team will be demotivated quicker by having a bad manager more than anything else. So I think, yes, you could get somebody in to do something that could be a good activity. It could motivate people, but I think a good motivator will actually coach the manager in terms of how to take that on, because so many people will get promoted into those positions because they're technically good or they've been there a long time, not because they've got good people leadership skills. And that's where a lot of businesses will fall down. And again, it's one of the big problems I help to fix in what I do, because I think every problem in a business is ultimately a leadership problem, and that's where it starts. So if you get that bit right, a lot of other things will fall into place. So yeah, I do think that motivation cannot be fully outsourced. It can be advised on, but not fully outsourced.
Okay. Do you think that in the same environment, if the leader gets, let's say, a really good coach on motivation, uh, can they introduce new methods of motivation with the existing team? Is that possible? Isn't there this, let's say, force that stays and some kind of accountability for the past actions and all these mixed together, so that even if top managers and the line managers have new methods, the employees just don't respond well to them because they're used to past methods.
So this is all about motivating through change. And obviously things will constantly change at work, whether you like it or not. And the best leaders will inspire people to come on that journey with them. And so the way of doing that is you really have to get people to buy in on the change and make them feel like they're involved in it. I mean, ultimately, businesses aren't democracies. You don't vote for your leaders. And it's not that everybody has to have a say before a decision is made. Sometimes a decision can be made from the top, and it has to be. But there's times, particularly when you're selling change, that you need to get the team on board. And the best way a leader can do that, if they're trying to introduce new methods of working, is to do trials, do tests, do consultations, get the team involved so that they do feel that they're having some input on it. and also not being afraid to abandon some of them if they find they don't work as well as expected, but to also focus on the pain points for the team as well as to why the current method doesn't work and needs to change. And sometimes actually you can get the team involved in that. And this is about empowering employees to have an opinion, to put ideas forward. And something I've done with clients, which has worked well in the past, is you have a ban the stupid rule competition. So it's where you get people on the front line who have to work with things that could have worked brilliantly 5 years ago, but are now no longer fit for purpose, to actually step back and question, well, why are we actually doing something in a certain way? And then that will in turn inspire the leaders to make a change. And it's a quick win. You've got the team on board, you've got a new way of working, it's come from the team, and it makes their lives easier. And usually you have to sell change on the fact it will make somebody's life easier.
Okay, so I think that is the most important premise of the change is that life becomes easier and company become even if the life is easier for the employees, the company becomes more efficient.
Mm.
I think these are the two main goals of the change, or should be.
Mm.
And now I would like to address the elephant in the room, and that is AI.
Yes.
How you see AI stepping in the companies? How many tasks or jobs can actually be taken over by AI today, and how many do you believe it will be taken over in the future? And how will this influence the development of human resources as such?
Mm. I think it's a good question because jobs will inevitably change. There'll be lots of jobs which are in existence now that won't be needed in the future because of AI. And I think, as I've watched or listened to podcasts on the subject, there are people who will say that AI now is only going to improve and get more sophisticated compared with what it is at the moment. I mean, at the moment, I can still tell if something's been written by AI or written by a human. But I think probably give it a few more years, that will change, and it'll be harder to tell as it gets more subtle and it acquires knowledge. And I can see why people would be scared of that kind of change because it's massive. And as I've wrote a little bit in my book about it, and I think the best thing people leaders can do now is, rather than stick their fingers in their ears and pretend it doesn't exist, is to actually look at how it can make life easier now, and to give consideration to what jobs they will need in the future versus now, and to be prepared for that, and to make sure that people have got the right skill sets to do them. Because I think in society, it could potentially change things quite considerably, because you might not need as many people in the workplace, or you might need them to do a different type of job. You might need the education system to change so that people are educated and learn different skills to the ones that they're doing at the moment. So there's all sorts of implications, and I think only time will ultimately tell. My view is there are some things that will never be able to be done by AI as successfully as human to human. So that could be doing training where you interact and you have group discussions around topics. It could be around having a motivational conversation with one, or having a human to human conversation, because people like to feel that connection. And if you take the difference of having a conversation with a human over Zoom versus doing it in real life, there's a lot of benefits to still doing it in real life. So applying that principle to AI, I don't see it changing in that way. There'll be human to human contact needed, but it's about getting the right skill sets in place now, and also thinking what can be automated, because there's still lots of painful low level jobs out there that could be automated and work very well. And I think that would be a good way to go. And again, just using HR as an example, if you look at your HR assistants who might man a helpline, there'll be your typical employee questions coming in, which are things like, can you send me a copy of my contract? Can you remind me how I change my bank details? How do I update my address? I mean, there's tech in place already where that can be self-serviced and automated, but I think there's so much more, those very transactional kind of queries, that can be automated, and that will be a good thing. And then actually it would leave professionals in HR or other professions to then focus on the strategic stuff, the stuff that does require more of a human brain, and that kind of overview of connecting the dots between different areas if you're going to bring a business forward in terms of its vision and where you want it to go.
Okay. You said that some jobs will be automated. does that mean that humans will work with robots? How will this interaction take place? Or not just with robots, but also with computer programs that will do a lot for them. As you said, the simple tasks like send me a copy of my employment contract can already be automated. So how do you see, how will the complexity of HR grow if more and more, let's say, low-level jobs are taken over by AI?
I think then there'll be more of a skill on there'll be more competition for jobs at the higher level if people want to work in a certain area, or you might need a few people at that level just to manage the AI systems and to check for defaults, because IT is still always going wrong, always going to need maintenance. And again, I'm going to use the supermarket as an example. We've got more and more tills that are automated or self-service now, but you still need a human in the background to hover around and fix errors. So I can sort of see a similar setup coming in for those low-level jobs. You might not have call centers with 50 people in anymore, but there might still, you might need 10 to 20 of them, for example. And they would be they might be monitoring, they might be fixing issues, they might be sort of updating and programming as things change and technology changes. So yeah, I think it will be different skill sets. And again, if you look at things like the manufacturing sector as well, where you still have people working on production lines, again, a lot of that could end up being automated, particularly with things like 3D printing and advancement of that and how things are actually physically made and packed and distributed. But I think you still need humans to oversee some of those processes, albeit not in quite such a granular level as you do if you're doing a job completely manually.
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any quick tips or any trade secrets that you can share with our listeners?
Quick trips. I think when it comes to, I think I'm going to speak to business owners and leaders out there on this one. I'm saying, first of all, don't feel you have to pretend to know it all from day one as a leader. Don't be afraid to get a coach. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you're unsure of how to do something, not just from a compliance point of view, but also about making your team feel great and do their best work. And I think to senior leadership teams, I would say, don't ever think you know it all either, because I've seen so many businesses put their junior leaders through training and coaching and it's worked brilliantly. But actually, I think some of the senior leaders need it the most. And as an entrepreneur and a business owner, my other advice is don't think you have to know it all either, because the best businesses flourish when you pay experts to do the bits that you don't have the time to do, don't have the knowledge of. You can't be all things to all people. And I've learned that one myself doing what I do. So I think that is my overarching help. It comes in two words: get help when you need it.
Thank you for these insights. Where can our listeners reach you?
So they can get in touch via my website. I'm on all the normal social media channels, or they can go to my website, www.surebetshr.com, and they can sign up. I do sort of weekly tips and tricks and email bulletins. They can follow me on social media. I do sort of funny videos of how to be a bad manager, so people kind of see it from a different point of view. And also they can buy my book, which I wrote, which is From New Line Manager to Great People Leader, which is on Amazon. And that is there for people who don't want to perhaps invest in a full training course, but still want the tips. So they can get started on that for as little as $7.99.
Okay, I will put links in the description below. And thank you, Doug. Thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thanks very much, Peter. Cheers.